Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
It's Monday, February 13th, 2023. I'm attorney Robert Patillo, sitting in for Roland Martin. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Yet another unarmed black man has been killed while in police custody after being viciously tased. This time, a North Carolina man with a heart condition died an hour after 6 police officers tased him repeatedly. We will show you the gruesome video, and we'll talk to community activists about what is being done to bring justice and attention to this case. Also, Super Bowl 57, if you hadn't heard, happened yesterday between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. But apparently online, more so than the game, what has been trending is conservative outrage about the black excellence going on. Everything from the Black National Anthem to Cheryl Lee Ralph to Rihanna at halftime, conservatives have been in a tizzy. We'll tell you about the social media firestorm. Black AIDS awareness is essential in our communities, particularly as the number of African Americans moving to the American South has increased. I'll speak to the executive director of the Southern AIDS Coalition about what is being done to bring more attention to the fight against HIV and AIDS. Also, in our Fit, Live, Win segment, we'll be discussing heart disease. And many of you know heart disease is the #1 killer of black men and women in this country, with nearly 700,000 dying per year. We'll be talking to 2 cardiologists about what is being done to limit the risk factors and to help us all survive this menace to our communities. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on Go Roll Roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Daryl Tyree Williams was sitting in a parked car on January 17th, and when police approached the vehicle conducting what the Raleigh police called preventative policing. Daryl was asked to get out of the vehicle, which he and another man did. He continued to ask what he had done wrong, what caused this police interaction. Then things turned for the worse. During this incident, Daryl was heard telling the police officers that he had a heart condition. These pleas were ignored, and he was tased. We're going to watch the video. I do caution you, this video is difficult to watch and can trigger some people. Let's watch the video.
Send us one more, Trey.
We're not doing nothing though.
All right, that's fine. Face the car.
Okay.
You grab the other one again.
What's going on?
Walk over here.
What's going on, officer?
Put both hands on the car.
Okay.
Don't move, okay?
Okay.
You understand? You got a tabard on you, you know? Keep both your hands up there.
Money in my pocket.
Keep both your hands up
I'll
there.
go for this car.
Keep both of your hands on the car. If you can't listen to my instructions, I'm going to put you in handcuffs.
Okay.
I'm not trying to put you in handcuffs. Okay.
He was talking to me. Why?
Both hands behind your back.
Why? What's going on, bro?
Give us another one, Riley. 10-18.
Get on the ground.
Stop it.
Taser.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Hands on your back now. Right now.
Get on the fucking ground.
Get on the ground. Hands on your back now. Put your hands on behind your back. Hands behind your back. Get your hands behind your back now.
I'm gonna tase you again.
Put your hands behind your back.
Bro, you're gonna get tased.
Put your hands behind your back now. Put your hands behind your back. Stay on the ground. Put your hands behind your back. Stay on the ground. Stay on the ground. Stay on the ground. Hands behind your back. That's not good. Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back now. Put your hands behind your back.
Put your hand behind your back. You're gonna get tased.
Put your hands behind your back.
Yo, come get him.
Put your hands behind your back.
Press him.
Put your hand behind your back.
Hold on. Hold on. Put your hands behind your back, Bo. You're gonna get tased again. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back now.
3, 2, 1.
Hands behind your back now. Release your hands. Let go of your
Put your hand.
hands on your back now. Right, hold what you got on that side. Hold what you got on that side, man. Yep, but go help get the other hand. Get the right hand with him. Get your right hand with him.
We're trying to get 75. We had one wrong. I think we're good. We're gonna need a supervisor.
Double cuff, double cuff. I got you. I got it. You got it? Double cuff, quick. Get it on there. Come on. I got it.
All right. I started searching him. Make sure we pat him down good.
Sit him up. Get him on recovery position. Yep.
Hey,
Sit up. Unit's coming. Come 10 for it.
hey, y'all, stay with him, but keep your head on swivel.
Bring your knees up to your chest. Bring your knees up to your chest. Relax, man. Relax. We're fighting us this whole time. I need someone to check me for probes. Check you.
Hasn't been requested already. EMS, 35-year-old black male, conscious breathing. Has some facial injuries.
I crossed by one at least.
I didn't see my flashlight around here.
Hey, is he still good? Hey, oh man.
Push me to the side. Is he breathing?
Sit him up, yeah.
I don't feel a pulse. I don't feel a pulse.
Recovery position.
Get him out.
Send him, Rob.
Hey, come on, Bo, wake up. Hey. He's up.
Yeah, he's
wake up.
He's good.
Okay, you can go because there's about to be a lot more people here.
Hey, Bo. Hey, Bo, wake up.
Yeah, we got one.
Yeah. You can feel the pulse?
He's tensed up. He's breathing.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's get,
he's good.
let's get these probes out of him.
He's got gloves on. Let me put
He's got at least a couple in his back.
Okay.
I don't know if they came out when we were fighting with him.
What?
If I could get you, can you check the probes on the ground, make sure they all have bars?
Let me get my gloves on. Passenger's in the wind. He's behind the...
He's probably behind the store. Yeah. I don't know. Sirianni can probably track that from over here.
We have more people? Yeah,
one more standing.
Got one outstanding. He probably ran behind the store. He was behind the black sedan over there.
Stay with him.
And when we went with him, he probably ducked out behind the store. Who? I don't know.
We go back.
You need a Narcan? Need gloves? Here, right here. I don't know. You got all the...
Is he breathing? Can you tell?
He just shook.
Okay.
Is he breathing?
He's got a pulse.
Yeah.
He's just, after our fight with him, he passed out.
Okay.
Shallow breathing. Hey, buddy.
Is there a better position for his head?
We don't want to sit him up if he's unconscious, though. This is probably the best position.
Yeah, just keep holding his head up.
You can put your foot under his head for a little support.
Yeah, if you could. Hey, Bo.
It's too far off the ground. You got?
You still got a pulse on him?
How far out is he in this?
I don't think I feel a pulse. Try again. I'm going to start CPR.
I can't get one.
Let's get CPR going.
Daryl died about an hour after this incident at a local hospital. After the break, we're going to be speaking with local activists and social justice operators Karen Pittman about what happened to Daryl Tyree Williams. We'll be back after the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
Most people think that these television shows that tell stories about who we are as black men, and then they paint these monolithic portraits of us. They think that they're being painted by white people. And I gotta tell you, there are a whole bunch of black folk that are the creators, the head writers, the directors of all of these shows, and that are still painting us as monoliths. The people don't really want to have this conversation.
No, they don't.
Next on Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Listen to this. Women of color are starting 90% of the businesses in this country. That's the good news. The bad news, as a rule, we're not making nearly as much as everyone else. But joining us on the next Get Wealthy episode is Betty Hines. She's a business strategist, and she's showing women how to elevate other women.
I don't like to say this openly, but we're getting better at it. Women struggle with collaborating with each other. And for that reason, one of the things that I demonstrate in the sessions that I have is that you can go further together if you collaborate.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Gavin Houston.
Hi, I'm Carl Payne. Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
Before the break, we watched disturbing video of the death of Daryl Tyree Williams at the hands of Raleigh police officers. After he informed them that he had a heart condition, he was then tased by multiple officers. And at the end of the video, we saw that he was unresponsive and not breathing, receiving CPR. He died about an hour later at a local hospital. Joining us now is North Carolina social justice activist Kerwin Pittman. Mr. Pittman, how are you doing this evening?
Hello, how you guys doing?
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about what the community response has been to this completely tragic and unnecessary death?
The community response is we're outraged. This is something that has continued to happen in the city of Raleigh, and that is the brutalization and the murder of Black and brown communities in the city of Raleigh. This is not nothing new that Raleigh Police Department has done. They have done before, and the trajectory they're going to look like they will kill again if no one's held accountable.
Now, the image that most people have when they think of Raleigh is, Raleigh, Durham, Winston-Salem, Research Triangle, ACC basketball. Talk a little bit about the conditions of the African-American community in that area and these continued issues with police brutality.
The conditions in this area when it pertains to police brutality is extremely egregious. We've seen numerous murders happen, not only in the city of Raleigh, but Wake County, and nothing has been done. And so this is a city that fails to hold these officers accountable and law enforcement accountable when egregious acts happen. And sadly to say, if we don't keep pushing for accountability, the officer that killed Daryl Williams may go free.
Now, when you talk about the lack of accountability, when previous actions such as this have happened, what has been the response from either the police department or city officials?
The response from city officials is silence. And that silence means that they accept the egregious acts that law enforcement is doing. The police chief never fires anyone or hold them accountable outside of putting them on leave, which is preliminary when the officer is involved in the killing of someone. The district attorney in Wake County, which Raleigh is in, never charged any officers in any egregious acts when they kill numerous individuals year after year after year in the city of Raleigh. And so we see a lack of accountability, or we see a silence from community leaders who are in charge of running the city. And so this means that it's acceptable for Raleigh Police Department to continue to kill people.
Now, when you talk about the actions of the police department and their leadership in particular, I think a lot of people are struck by this articulation of quote-unquote preventative policing. You have individuals who are sitting in a car, not apparently doing anything, who are approached by police and started this interaction. What exactly is preventative policing, as you understand it from the Raleigh Police Department?
Preventative policing is nothing more than Raleigh's own version of stop and frisk. This is when they find the excuse when there is no excuse to really what they call investigate marginalized communities, right? Because all this preventative policing is only happening in the Black parts of the city, right? You don't see preventative policing happening in the white parts of the city, even though crime is up just like it is all over the city in the white part of the city. And so preventative policing is nothing more than Raleigh's own version of stop and frisk of marginalized communities, finding an excuse when there is no excuse to continue to harass Black and brown people.
And when you articulate it that way, it sounds very much like traditional racial profiling. Has there been any efforts made to either file a federal lawsuit against this preventative policing program, or other ways to try to remove it? Because we've seen it be ineffective, one, in stopping crime nationwide, but also it has a deleterious effect when it comes to increasing police interactions with African-American, Black, and brown communities.
So they just now termed it preventative policing, though they have been deploying this stop and frisk method for years. Now they're just now putting a title to it after this particular incident actually came to light. And so we will be pursuing outside internal investigation into these egregious actions of really racial profiling of these marginalized communities inside of Raleigh.
Now, what has been the community's response to this killing in particular? Are there any planned calls to action? Are there marches? Are there rallies? How will change that to be affected in this particular case?
So we've actually held a protest already in response to the murder of Daryl Williams. And so that is one step. The next step is attacking it from a policy standpoint. We understand that the power lies with city council to oversight Raleigh Police Department. And so we're gonna double down on these council members and the mayor of this city to either do something or we will get them out of position of power. But also we want to call in for an external investigation into these egregious acts of these officers, because we see that the city and city officials are not capable of holding these individuals accountable from previous incidents when egregious acts like this occur.
Now, we've seen in other cases nationwide the need to bring in outside, as you said, investigations. In the Ahmaud Arbery case in Georgia, where I'm from, we saw the Attorney General's office, Chris Carr, have to step in and take over that prosecution. We've seen in various other states and jurisdictions this taking place. Have there been any conversations either with the state Attorney General or with the FBI or the Department of Justice to investigate this on the local level?
So we're actually just now getting the ball rolling today, and had a meeting today about having these conversations with these different entities to try to go ahead on and expedite this process of really getting these external entities to look into the egregious acts and history and pattern of Raleigh Police Department and city officials' silence.
And now I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. So some people may look at this and say, well, why did he resist? Why did he simply comply with what officers said? If he had done so, they would not have deployed the taser. What would be your response to that sort of critique?
As a black man in America, seeing how law enforcement are continuously brutalizing and murdering our people at a higher rate than any across the country, but specifically in Raleigh, North Carolina, Darrell Williams was fleeing for his life. And as you can see, they attacked this man like a mob. This was a guy who was tased multiple times, even after he expressed he had heart conditions. So anybody in their right frame of mind, especially when the officer began to come combative with him and really try to yoke him up a little bit, would have been scared. And quite naturally, it's going to be either fight or flight. Darrell Williams chose to flight, and you see what happened when they caught him after he flighted.
And then also, I think some people will say, well, the police officers recovered, I believe, a stolen gun was in the vehicle, marijuana was in the vehicle, a open container of alcohol. What would you say to the people who will say, well, if you don't want to have interactions with police, then don't commit these types of minor crimes that may lead to a police interaction?
And so what I would say is, we know that people are innocent until proven guilty. We know that Darrell Williams had another passenger inside of the car with him, and not to say that these items belong to this passenger, but how do we know that they did not? It was clear to see that Darrell Williams didn't have an open container when they initially went up to his car. But also, let's lean into the fact of, why did they even walk up to his car anyway? Raleigh police was not called to this scene to even be walking up to anybody's cars. So that is an issue all in itself.
And then finally, from the devil's advocate position, some people will say, well, they did try to use tasers, which are a less than lethal option, as opposed to deploying handguns, as opposed to doing like the Memphis PD did, and pulling out the billy clubs, et cetera. What should officers do when when a potential suspect is fleeing, when they're trying to use less than lethal force?
So this was not a case of them utilizing less than lethal force in a correct way, right? Because what we've seen is they did not follow policy and procedure when utilizing this taser on Darrell Williams. As Darrell Williams fled, according to their policy, they should have not shot this man. Especially after he expressed he had a heart condition. It should have been some point to de-escalate, and to which the city of Raleigh just rolled out a new de-escalation policy to which they didn't even follow in this particular case. And so I guess following policy and procedures when deploying these less than lethal weapons will really make these procedures effective when deploying this stuff.
I agree, and I think we had a similar case to that in Atlanta with Rashard Brooks, where, somebody runs off, you have their car, so tow the car, get their information, and then go pick them up later. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to tase them. You don't have to beat them. You do not have to kill them. What advice would you give, or what demands are community activists making from city leadership to change policies going forward? You stated they have a use of force policy that they violated. What changes need to be made to police protocols and procedures?
So what changes need to be made is, for one, the officers involved in Darrell Williams' murder needs to be fired. There has to be some form of accountability. Without accountability, we see that these officers are going to continue to just run amok and brutalize the citizens of Raleigh like they've been doing year after year. Also, there needs to be some oversight and additional training when it comes to deploying less than lethal weapons, such as a taser, because clearly these officers didn't follow policy and procedure. They broke numerous policies when deploying this particular taser on Darrell Williams. And so we have a city advisory committee here regarding the police department that has no teeth, has no subpoena power, it has no investigatory powers. We want to disband into this board and a remake up of this board that hold these different items to hold these officers accountable.
And with that, can you talk a little bit about what the plans are coming, or what upcoming plans there are for the community to make their demands known to the city, and how people can get involved, particularly following on social media or providing support to the family and to other community groups?
People can follow the progression of this case at my Instagram, activist _Kerwin Pittman, Raleigh Demands Justice, emancipatенc.org, Raleigh PAC. It is a host of other social justice organizations that is involved. And so if they want to get into the fight with us and care to funnel supplies to the movement and what we're trying to build here, please feel free to reach out to one of these organizations and myself, and we'll make sure that they get to the right hands and get into the right hands. Most importantly, know that we will continue to push city leaders and city council to hold these officers accountable. If not, then get out the way. When people's lives are at stake, we cannot play reindeer games. We really have to be on the ball and have open and honest conversation and address the elephants in the room. It's a problem in Raleigh, and we're going to continue to push until that problem is out of here.
All right, we got about 30 seconds left. What's going to happen next in this case? Where can the community become involved next in this action?
Next in this action, the community can look forward to the Williams family signing on with additional attorneys. And we're going to continue to have press conferences. We're going to continue to push forward. Like I said, the groups that I named aforementioned, also as well as myself, you can stay involved through social media. Please continue to spread the word about what happened to Darrell Williams in North Carolina, because this is serious, y'all. We have a problem right here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's going to take all of us to really shame these individuals, to hold these people accountable.
Well, I thank you so much for all the activism that you are doing and everything that's happening in the community to stand up to stop these sorts of things from happening. Please keep us updated on the goings-on so we can ensure that the entire community is updated. And also reach out to me on social media, because I would love to become involved and help out any way that I can. I think it's crucial that we bring these things to light, because unless we do so, they will continue to happen. Thank you so much, Kerwin Pittman, social justice activist from Raleigh, North Carolina. We'll be back after the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, a relationship that we have to have. We're often afraid of it and don't like to talk about it. That's right, we're talking about our relationship with money. And here's the thing, our relationship with money oftentimes determines whether we have it or not.
The truth is, you cannot change what you will not acknowledge.
Balancing your relationship with your pocketbook. That's next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Hi, this is Essence Atkins.
Hey, I'm Deion Cole from Blackish.
Hey, everybody, this is your man, Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
We're going to continue We're going to continue this discussion on Daryl Tyree Williams with our panel. Joining us is Dr. Julian Malveaux, Dean of the College of Ethics Studies, California State University, LA. Also, Dr. Omekongo Dibinga, Senior Professional Lecturer, School of International Service, American University. And also Renita Shannon, Georgia State Representative in the seat formerly held by Ron Mayo, and before that held by the illustrious Stacey Abrams. Thank all of you so much for joining us this evening. Dr. Malveaux, I'll start with you. We've seen so many of these cases of excessive force by officers. What needs to happen nationally to stop these things from happening simply on the trickle, but actually having a comprehensive policy to regulate police interactions with individuals?
Oh, Robert, watching that video makes your blood chill. Just to look at that brother being beaten like that. And I'll repeat something that I've been saying for a long time. If these officers had their pensions on the line, believe me, they would behave differently. If his family will have a lawsuit and the city will have to pay for the lawsuit, but if they don't have anything skin in the game, anything at risk, think about it. They would behave differently. I mean, they were out of control. And they were absolutely out of control. So I really think that we need to look at their pensions. I think nationally, the George Floyd Act is a floor. It's not a ceiling in terms of what needs to be done with police accountability. And we basically have seen the basic resistance to the George Floyd Act. And the biggest perpetrator is that South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. He ought to be ashamed of himself. He literally really ought to be ashamed of himself. I don't think he is. I think that we've got a lot of work to do. But I'll tell you, Robert, it's really, I won't say disheartening because we can't be disheartened. But the activist said we're going to have another press conference. How effective is another press conference? Is another press conference going to stop somebody from being beaten like that? You told people to shout out the Twitter feed. We've got to take it another level up. I mean, you cannot tweet your way to freedom.
Absolutely. Dr. Dibinga, on that same point, what can be done nationally? Because we've seen places like Memphis, we saw the police chief acted very quickly, fired the officers. We saw that the city prosecuted very quickly, but then you have a case like this where the same protocols are not followed. How can we have a consistent standard across the board nationwide?
Well, when you talk about nationwide, I'm thinking about Governor DeSantis in Florida, right? And everything that he's doing with his racism and his policies. But one of the stories that I heard was that Florida has been doing well economically because the way that the economy's been running. And I'm like, with everything that he's doing to destroy our history and remove it, and with Disney and everything else, how is he still doing well economically? When we look at what was going in Raleigh and we look at what's going on in these other places, if you want to talk about national attention, we have to start putting pressure on organizations and companies for boycotts of cities and states that are involved in these types of practices, and letting them know that we're not going to come there for conventions, for conferences, sporting events. If there are things that maybe the NAACP and other Urban League and other organizations are doing on a regular basis, we have to start putting financial pressure on all of these cities and states where governors and mayors and chiefs of police are benefiting off of Black pain and Black death. I know that during the civil rights movement, every boycott wasn't successful, but the efforts were made. Montgomery bus boycott, look what it did to crippled communities. We need to have not just Twitter things saying boycott this. We need to understand real history of boycotts, real organizations of economic boycotts, and start withdrawing our resources from these organizations and places. And part of that boycott also has to be targeting the sponsors who support these police unions, who support these mayors, who support these governors, and all of these different groups that have no real interest in supporting Black life. And until we start to do that, as Dr. Malveaux said, we can't just tweet this away. And marches are only going to do but so much. They're important, don't get me wrong, but they're always going to be viewed as temporary. How many of us have the will and the desire to start saying we're going to start holding some of our money individually as well as organizations until these organizations understand? Because like Dr. Malveaux said, if we're not going to hit them in the pensions books and their pensions and the pocketbooks so that their hearts would follow, then this is what we have to do on a nationwide level.
State Representative Shannon, we've seen often situations like this happen in our state of Georgia, particularly. What can happen on the state level? Can we talk a lot about the federal legislation, the George Floyd Justice of Policing Act, now the Tyree Nichols duty to intervene at, but what can be done on the state level to try to bring down this level of police brutality that seems to happen in every state?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because far too many people do not understand which levels of government are responsible for policing. The local level, meaning your mayor, your city council. In DeKalb County, we have a CEO and then we have commissioners. They are all primarily responsible for police because of something called home rule, which constitutionally gives localities the ability to be able to control their police force. What the state level can do is set up databases and track police officers and their use of force to make sure that they can't hop from county to county. So it's shared responsibility. But more than that, I think what we need to be talking, I know what we need to be talking about is not just accountability for police officers. That is too small of an ask. Accountability is not going to bring back anybody's relative. What we need to all understand and get together collectively as a community to make our voices heard on is letting lawmakers know, letting city councils know, letting mayors know that some parts of policing just need to be abolished. Accountability is not going to stop police from killing Black people, which is what we ultimately want. Accountability is important, but it is not the total solution. There are some things that just need to be abolished. For example, these proactive police patrols. As the activist told you, this is just an opportunity for police officers to over-police our communities and harass Black and brown folks. And so there's an important lesson in this story, because far too often I've even heard people from our community wrongly assume that police are able to reduce crime, which data shows they absolutely cannot do that. More policing does not lead to safer communities. And sometimes folks in our communities are asking for these proactive patrols, and really what you're doing is inviting violence, as we know that contact with the police is the largest predictor of police violence.
Well, absolutely. And I'm going to take this back to you, Dr. Dominga. We talk a lot about police interactions with the community and that leading to additional brutality. But as Representative Shannon said, it's often communities are asking for additional policing to bring down crime. We've seen this happen nationwide, that whenever crime spikes in a community, police have more militaristic tactics, which lead to more brutality and violence. The community reacts by demanding change. Politicians try to create change. Police respond by either having mass sickouts, early retirements, refusing to answer any calls that aren't officer down calls, etc. Crime goes back up, and then the demands for more aggressive policing starts right back over. This is what we saw with many Black female mayors in the last several years who have been attacked by police unions. What can happen so that we can both have competent and comprehensive policing to fight crime, but also not the types of police abuses that we're currently seeing?
Well, one of the things I feel like we need to do is we need to get more involved in policing as it relates to becoming officers and getting involved in that light. When you look at the history of other groups like the Irish, one of the things that they did, they're experiencing great levels of discrimination in this country and actually became part of the police force and part of the enforcing body in this country. We need to make people understand the importance of being involved and engaged in policing. And that way we can be part of the solution in terms of having police who are actually part of our neighborhoods, who are part of the force. One of the challenges is that when we ask for more policing, people who come in, they're coming in from other neighborhoods and spaces, and they come in as more of an occupying presence in our community, and then they're going right back to where they're from. And so I feel like on that level, we can start to be more proactive. Unfortunately, it's not a short-term solution, but this policing is not going anywhere. I mean, policing, it started with slavery, right? It went from the overseer to the officer. And so we have to understand that if we want to have more police change and more effectiveness, we have to get more committed in infiltrating the police organization, because it's clearly showing right now that they don't really have an interest in changing as they are, because they don't have to. Their pensions aren't being affected. The unions are still going to be strong, and these mayors and governors are going to be still supporting them as well. And that also leads to what Representative Shannon was saying. We also have to get more involved in the political process. So anywhere where you have somebody, a police chief or somewhere else that's elected, we're making sure that they are also answering to us as their primary constituency.
Dr. Malvo, kind of piggybacking on your initial point, we saw this year that the Republicans, about 10 of them in the House, were able to hold the entire federal government hostage for 2 weeks while they extracted out every concession they could think of from Kevin McCarthy to become Speaker of the House. Conversely, we've had the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act lingering in Congress for 2 years now. The Tyree Nichols duty to intervene is now being added to that. What can the 50-plus members of Congressional Black Caucus do to kind of push this legislation through? Should they be holding the debt ceiling hostage, saying we won't vote on it until you pass police reform? Should they be saying we won't be passing any military spending bills until you address police reform? Can more aggressive actions be taken the same way the Tea Party and the Freedom Caucus and the MAGA part of the Republican Party took very drastic action to get what they wanted?
Well, Robert, I'm an economist, so I would not support holding the debt ceiling hostage. It would have international implications that I don't think we can afford. However, on any of the other points, including the military, I think that it's perfectly appropriate to basically do the same thing that Republicans have done to Democrats. But I think even more than that, the activist that you had on earlier, he talked about the police boards, the local police board having no power. And you have various sundry citizen oversight boards in various and sundry cities. And most of the time they don't have power. Most of the time they don't have subpoena power. They can't do it. They may not even have investigative power. So they're just kind of sitting there. I think that it's also important. Representative Shannon is absolutely right when she talked about who makes the difference. It's mayors, it's city councilors, it's others. Why aren't we holding our mayors and city councilors accountable in terms of these police commissions? They have to have some teeth. Otherwise, you have people going to a meeting every month and they hear about police abuses and there's nothing they can't even censure them. So we have to be sure, I'm with Owa Congo when he talks about, we have been accepting this nonsense. Every time you turn around, there's another. It's like one of these things, one a day almost. And, people, loved ones are dying and there is no accountability. And we keep saying, well, we march. And I like marching. But, I'm a 60s child. So I have done my shares of marches and sit-ins and all of that. And many of them have made a difference. But many of them have not made a difference. And many of it is political theater. And we really have to stop with the political theater and really be willing to do some things. Yesterday at church, the pastor asked, where is Black defiance? Defiance. And our theme this Black History Month is Black resistance. But quite frankly, what I see all too often is Black complacency. We see this happen. People are going to start tweeting. People are upset. People are outraged. Of course. But can we vote somebody out of office? Can we propose legislation to take pensions? Can we muzzle these police unions? And you ask what the Congressional Black Caucus can do? These people, they're colleagues. They sit by them every day. They're sitting in a chamber. They need to walk up on some of these Republicans from a humanistic perspective and say, how would you feel if this happened to your child? How would you feel if this was happening in your community? Really just to engage them at that level. Now, some of them, I wouldn't have a conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene if you put $1,000 in my hand, because I don't think it would turn out right. But no, I know it wouldn't turn out right. But in any case, some of these folks, they represent constituencies who are equally outraged about this. So the caucus has to be very proactive in talking to these people and talking not only across the aisle from a partisan perspective, but also from a cameral perspective. In other words, Congress people should talk to the senators from their state, if they're Republicans, to say, look, this is really a crisis in our community. What is your objection to the George Floyd Act?
Absolutely. And Dr. Malvo, good and well that if you had a conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene, that $1,000 would be bail money. Let's just know how this thing's really going to go. Let's be for real. We know how this is going to happen. I think it's a crucial conversation that we have to start having, and understanding that this kind of defeatism that we often have has been kind of beat into us after, if you're my age, you grew up seeing the Rodney King beating, and then you're in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're still seeing almost the exact same images. it's easy to become disconcerted when it comes to the idea that something can happen. But I think that the new focus that we have, the new leadership we have, this is the time for it to take place. We're going to keep this going on the other side of the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. An hour of living history with Dr. Richard Mariba Kelsey, thinker, builder, author, and one of the most important and impactful elders in the African American community. He reflects on his full and rich life and shares his incomparable wisdom about our past, present, and future.
African genius is saying that my uncle was a genius, my brother was a genius, my neighbor was a genius. I think we ought to drill that in ourselves and move ahead rather than believing that I got it.
That's next on the Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Hi, I'm BB Winans.
Hi, I'm Kim Burrell.
Hi, I'm Carl Payne.
Hey, everybody, this is Sherry Shepherd. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, and while he's doing Unfiltered, I'm practicing the wobble.
We turn now to the conditions in the island nation of Haiti. As many of you who have been watching international news will see, conditions continue to crumble there. After the assassination of former President Moise, a cadre of individuals have sought to take leadership in Haiti without the mandate of the people. There have not been democratic elections, I believe, since 2019. And because of this, we've seen the onslaught of foreign-sponsored gang violence taking over much of the country. Incidents of sexual violence, murders, and kidnappings have become all but mundane and commonplace. Just this Sunday, more than 8 individuals were kidnapped leaving Catholic Mass and are being held for ransom their families' behest. Because of this, the Biden administration has launched a pilot program allowing up to 30,000 migrants per month to come to the United States of America from nations such as Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba, who are fleeing violence and seeking asylum. To discuss this program and more of the political situation there in Haiti, we're joined by attorney Anastasia Sanat from the Haitian Americans Lawyers Association of Illinois. Attorney Sanat, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. Happy New Year. Nice to see you.
Good to see you again, as always. Could you talk a little bit about the current political situation there in Haiti, where you have a prime minister who's pretending to be president? You have, I think, no current elected officials serving in the entirety of the country because of the breakdown of the democratic process. What is the current status of the Haitian government?
Well, obviously, there is none right now. The interim leadership, as you've already mentioned, is not actually an elected leadership. That means they were not voted into office democratically by the people. They were placed in those situations at the death of Jovenel Moise. And so, unfortunately, the people have not been able to choose people to govern themselves. They have been governed by people that truly want to do whatever it is that they'd like to do.
And with that, the current Prime Minister, President Henry, has asked for international troops to come in to, quote unquote, peacekeep to tamp down the gang violence. But many Haitian citizens who I've spoken to and relatives that I've spoken to on the island are more afraid of international peacekeepers coming in than they are even of the gangs that are currently running parts of the country. Well, can you talk a little about this mistrust of these international NGOs when it comes to dealing with the current wrath of internationally sponsored gang violence?
Sure. I mean, if anyone is familiar with the history of Haiti, then they should know that in the past, when Haitians have allowed other people to come into the country, those leaders have misused the people and misused the resources of that country for their own self-greedy behaviors. And so we have a situation in which people are historically not able to trust new people coming into the country. They would need assurances. In fact, I work with an organization here in Chicago, the Haitian American Coalition of Haitian Organizations. And what we've been doing is we've been trying to encourage people in the United States to give opportunities to a lot of the Haitians that are leaving Haiti and the migrants that are here. We're looking at three broad issues that we've been talking to our elected officials about. First, immigration reform. You've kind of touched on some things that are not permanent immigration issues. They're actually just policies that come down per administration. So we've got temporary protected status, you've got humanitarian parole, not only for the Haitians, but then you've got the regular parole in which this current president has increased its opportunity. So about 7,500 per country that you mentioned would be able to come in through that parole program. But then you also have what we call a need for basic human rights and a pathway to citizenship, such as the Cuban Adjustment Act, which allows people to get their green card and then ultimately apply for citizenship after a certain period of time. You also have NACARA, which is a program that was started many years ago for those from Nicaragua who qualified. There was also HARIFA, that was for the Haitian people in order to give them green cards. So what we're asking the American people to do is to look at immigration as one of the things that needs to be reformed in order to give these individuals a pathway to citizenship and not just plain 2 years of reprieve. Number one. Number two, we're also looking for reparations because we believe that the reason why the country is the way that it is because they defeated all of these colonizers, United States, Spain, France, as well as the United Kingdom. And so if those countries got together, kind of like the Marshall Plan that they did right after World War II, and redevelop the country, then we can increase the economic resources that the people are getting from their own land. And then finally, of course, besides reparation in the Marshall Plan, what we need is reconstruction, right? A lot of these infrastructures that exist in Haiti are old and dilapidated. So we would need new water systems, new travel roads. We would need a lot of different things in order to make sure that the people are safe. And then, we can increase industry that used to exist in Haiti, like tourism. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to go to Haiti like you do Dominican Republic. They're on the same island. So when people are thinking about what is it that I can do to help, that's really where you can focus your attention. If you go to our website, HALAIL.org, there's ways that you can contact your congressman, you can contact your elected officials in order to convince them to not only have immigration reform, but reparations and also reconstruct the country. Those are the types of things that you could do.
I find it interesting whenever I'm having discussions with international NGOs and they talk about the concept of Haiti fatigue, that it always seems like something is going on with Haiti, and therefore they've gotten tired of sending aid, of sending help to the island, but they never talk about the need for France just to send back all that money they stole. Yes, you're tired of the stories about Haiti because y'all are still sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars that were stolen from the island. What do you think can be done to kind of raise this issue of international reparations for not just Haiti, but other formerly colonized countries that need their money back from these countries that stole them in order to develop? We call them third world or developing nations, but you won't give them their money back that you stole.
Yeah, in fact, I had a good conversation with someone about the Commonwealth. And United Kingdom is basically modern day colonizing all of the countries in the Commonwealth. True, some of people have signed on to allow their nations to use their resources and only give a percentage to the United Kingdom, but the United Kingdom is not giving them anything in return. For example, when there's some kind of hostility in their country, it's not like they can just go to the United Kingdom and say, hey, look, there's hostility in one of your commonwealths. Therefore, I need protection and you need to give it to me. So when we're thinking about reshaping our economic systems, right? Because these are world systems. These are not just individual country systems. These are world systems. We do need to think about people like in the New York Times that did an op-ed, and they did all the historical findings to say the Eiffel Tower was built by the slaves from Haiti. So there is no France without Haiti. There is no Louisiana, which includes so much of the United States, without Haiti. There are so many more things that could not be possible without the Haitian Revolution. Therefore, when we start doing these things that you and I are doing right now, Attorney Patillo, just talking about it, bringing it to the attention, reading about it, taking our time, this is how we can change the economic dynamic of the world systems, because we're hoping that the ancestors, which is what we are, ancestors who are kind of living out the dream of what our ancestors wanted us to do. So if we continue to push and push and push, just like slavery ended, just like civil rights changed the makeup of the United States, we can change the makeup of our world systems by continuing to push them along and to form better and more palatable, economic policies.
At this point, is there a way to have a stable and functioning democracy in Haiti without outside Western intervention? Will there be a way to actually have recognized government without essentially the U.S. or the United Nations propping that person up for a time being and maintaining order?
And you know what? That's hard to say, because Haiti has not been able to live democratically and on their own since its inception. There's always been some kind of international influence since 1804. So here we are in 2023, and we see violence, we see gangs, we see all of these things. And obviously, the people could certainly rise up against these gangs, but then they would be risking their lives. So if the people were empowered, what would they really do, right? And how would they get empowered? If you bring guns there, are they necessarily going to keep the guns and use it on their own people? Or will it end up in the hands of the gangs, thereby killing the people that want to be saved by themselves? So there's just so many things that you could speculate. How can it be done without UN help? Well, right now, I can't see any other way. How can it be done without all of these colonizers that initially placed the situation the way that it is in that situation without helping? I don't see how it can be done. But if it is to be done, there has to be some assurances. The people need to know that you're not going to come in and destroy it like you've been doing for over 200 years.
Absolutely. And before we run out of time, what are some organizations that people can reach out to? They want to ensure that their help and assistance is going to the right place. We, of course, all remember the Clinton Foundation, the Red Cross after the earthquake, and the way those funds were squandered. What are some organizations people can reach out to if they want to help, but they want to ensure that everything's going to get where it needs to get to?
That's so interesting that you would ask me that. But right now, a lot of the NGOs have already left. So there's not a lot of NGOs that are on the ground. You can look out to nonprofits that support Haiti, like Doctors Without Borders, but many of them are not going back because they sent a ship to Haiti in order to help the people, and the gangs turned the ship away. So it's really difficult to find an organization that would be able to assist. For example, Hope for Haiti, Haitian Health Foundation, Foncoze, the World Health Organization, Partners in Health. I mean, there's so many different organizations that used to be down there and used to be doing the work. Unfortunately, you don't know who's able to really get the money and to do the work without being threatened with harm by the gangs that are currently controlling the capital city.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Attorney Sanat, for everything that you've worked on. And of course, we want to ensure that we continue to bring spotlight to this, because the American media and mainstream media does not really pay attention to issues in Black countries unless it's something that benefits them. And I think it's important for us to understand our role in the U.S. of supporting and helping those people there who are looking for a stable and functioning government, just as all of us are. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, Attorney Sanat. We'll be back after the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
When you talk about blackness, and what happens in Black culture. We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
This is Judge Mathis.
Hi, I'm Teresa Griffin.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
In 2020, the American South comprised about 38% of the national population. However, it made up 50% of new AIDS diagnoses. Here's a map just to show you this. According to the AIDS VU, the disproportionate burden of HIV in the South is experienced among certain populations, such as Black women, Black and Latinx and bisexual men, and the Black and Latinx transgender communities. Joining me now is Dafina Ward, the Executive Director of the Southern AIDS Coalition. She's here to explain how the National AIDS Memorial, Southern AIDS Coalition, and Gilead Sciences have come together to change the patterns and reimagine the fight to end HIV and AIDS in the South. Ms. Ward, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am outstanding. So talk a little bit about this kind of new epidemic of AIDS in the South is not being spoken of, because many people, particularly Gen Z, who did not grow up during the AIDS epidemic of the 80s, how they're not as educated or perhaps as scared of AIDS as people in previous generations were.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what we've seen happen in recent decades is there definitely is less focus on HIV and AIDS in our communities, particularly in the Black community, but in our communities in general. With the advent of HIV and AIDS in the United States over 40 years ago, what we saw was what was at that time thought to be a death sentence upon diagnosis. And now with the development of a range of interventions, medications, treatment that can even prevent an HIV transmission. Now that it is no longer that, people are living and thriving for decades with an HIV or AIDS diagnosis. And so I think people have assumed that it's no longer something that we need to be talking about or concerned about. And that is far from the truth, as you noted in those statistics that you shared.
And why do you think this is particularly pernicious and prevalent in the South? The area that is, theoretically the Bible Belt of America, why are they experiencing this certain burst of HIV and AIDS infections?
You know, when I talk about HIV in the South, there's always important to remember that this is a systemic issue, that the South has long held a lot of injustice in a range of ways. And I hearken back to the days of racist lynchings and racial violence, before Jim Crow and after Reconstruction. We saw what happened in the South with the end of slavery. There were the Black codes. There has always been some type of systemic model that has allowed for Black folks,
poor folks to be the subject of health inequities and injustice and a lack of access. And so what we're talking about in the South is a result of centuries old injustices that are really coming home to roost in the framing of our health inequities. When you talk about the fact that African Americans make up about 19% of the population in the South, but half of the new HIV diagnoses, what we're seeing is that the systems at play that result in poverty, which the South is also disproportionately dealing with housing insecurity, and you're talking about who is less likely to have health insurance. You're talking about the Southern United States. You're also talking about, as you mentioned, the Bible Belt, the fact that many of our states do not allow for comprehensive sexual health education. We're dealing currently with legislative policies and state leaders in the South who want to silence and even harm communities that are disproportionately impacted by HIV. So HIV has really been utilized as a weapon in many of our communities to further marginalize those who've already been victimized and been silenced. And so we're seeing what happens in our communities when we don't talk about health justice in the context of HIV being a prevalent issue that impacts so many people that we love.
For a long, perhaps since the beginning of the HIV epidemic, it's been kind of stigmatized as being the gay disease, something that's prevalent among African American men and people in the LGBTQIAPK plus community. But one of the largest growing groups of new HIV and AIDS infections is Black women. What messaging needs to be created to help people understand that this is not simply a disease among gay men, but also prevalent in other parts of the community?
Absolutely. Stigma is what kills. And we know this to be true. The stigma, the silence, the shaming is what leads to these terrible health outcomes that we're talking about. So particularly for Black women don't see themselves in the HIV research. Black women don't see themselves in advertisements around medications, around prevention strategies like pre-exposure prophylaxis. But Black women are not seeing themselves. And as a result, what often happens is that providers then are dismissive of whether or not Black women or women need to even be thinking about HIV because of the stigma and the assumption that identity is what results in an HIV diagnosis, which we know not to be true. We're seeing that so often women don't even realize that they need to be getting an HIV test, and that providers are not providing the type of guidance and treatment and care that would even speak to that. Because so often women are silenced in seeking healthcare when it comes to very intimate issues. And sadly, in so many instances, there may be a situation where there's a power dynamic that might prevent someone if not even just obtaining a test, from getting treatment. I've met a number of women who are living with HIV, where an abuser, a partner may hold that over their head and threaten to tell people about her HIV status in order to continue to hold power over her. And so there is also these issues around power and control, which are larger societal issues that we have to deal with that very much impact women who are living with HIV and those who might transmit HIV.
And on that point, it seems that we have two cultural dynamics going in different directions. On the one hand, as you said, we've had the gutting of sexual education programs in public schools around the country. We have a lack of national media attention on the issue of HIV/AIDS. If you remember in the early 90s, you had TLC and Left Eye running around with condoms, telling people to wrap it up. You had commercials and PSAs really pushing this message of safe sex to young people and making it hip and making it part of really that Gen Z or Gen X and millennial culture. You had Magic Johnson being a spokesperson for HIV/AIDS and the needs for preventative measures, for testing, etc. But that has very much gone away for this new generation. And at the same time, you have kind of the rise of this OnlyFans culture, this kind of very permissive and promiscuous culture that's existing today, without the knowledge on how to do so safely. What do we need to do, particularly in our communities, to ensure that our young people have the proper information so they can prevent themselves from being exposed, and if they are exposed, to get the type of medical treatment necessary to have that long and fulfilling life that medical science now provides?
I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that that we're not shaming when we're educating. You know, it is not sex in and of itself that's something that needs to be made negative. It really is about people understanding that there are a range of prevention strategies you can have in your toolkit that should be readily available. So I think first and foremost, it's about making people feel seen, particularly our young people. So often we further stigmatize them when they're having their own time of exploration and learning and growth. When young people are exploring gender identity or their sexual orientation and coming into themselves, we really have to do a better job of not silencing and shaming them and supporting them in a way where we're making clear to them what all of the options are that are at hand for them to be protected from HIV and other STIs beyond HIV. We need to make sure that in our communities, when we're talking about HIV, that we are talking about it as a chronic condition. And while we know that people can now live for decades, very long lives with an HIV diagnosis, that it's still something to be taken seriously. That if you are in a situation where you could have been exposed to HIV, you could have also been exposed to other things through sexual contact. And as you mentioned, if you hearken back to the 90s and you know, when we were talking about these things, sadly, with HIV, it's as though we've only been able to focus on one particular population at a time. You know, so there was a huge focus at the onset on white gay men. And then there was a focus at one point around IV drug users, and so in Black women. And so it has not been we have not done a great job of comprehensively focusing on our communities at large and providing education that is clearly accessible and relatable to everyone. And I think that is a really big piece of this. And that's what so much of our partnership from Southern AIDS Coalition and National AIDS Memorial is about, is making sure that we know that we all have a role to play in how we change the pattern and how we talk about sexual health, how we talk about HIV, and how we talk about our policies and the practices in our communities that make people more susceptible to an HIV diagnosis.
Can you talk a bit about that partnership and how working together with the National AIDS Memorial, with Gilead Science, and with the Southern AIDS Coalition, what are the programs that are now being offered to help educate the community to try to stop this epidemic before it turns into another pandemic?
Yeah, so Southern AIDS Coalition has been doing work in the South for over 20 years with a mission to end the HIV epidemic and the disproportionate impact of HIV on Southern communities. And we're really excited about our partnership with National AIDS Memorial, which is the home of the AIDS Memorial Quilt, which was started 35 plus years ago to capture the names, the legacies, the stories of people who have died of AIDS-related complications. Now, the quilt is in and of itself the world's largest public art display. There are thousands and thousands of stories told in the fabric of the quilt. And what the National AIDS Memorial realized in looking at the quilt itself is that of the 54 miles of quilt, if you lay it from end to end, over 50 miles of quilt, less than 2 miles tell the stories of Black people who have lost their lives to AIDS-related complications. And there's a number of reasons for that. The quilt in of itself started on the West Coast. And so you don't have as many stories from the South, where you have so many Black people who sadly have lost their lives to AIDS-related complications. And also it's the matter of who's going to tell the story, and recognizing that sadly in our community, so many of our families, we don't talk about HIV and AIDS. We've had so many people come to our events who say, until today, we always said my brother died of cancer or pneumonia. And in order to even make the quilt a thing that includes our family members, we have to acknowledge their legacy and acknowledge their experience and celebrate them. And so Gilead Sciences has funded us to do a series of activations across the South called Change the Pattern. And it really is about changing the pattern of the quilt to make sure that it's more inclusive, changing the pattern of Southern policies that may further perpetuate discrimination and stigma, and address how we build an HIV justice movement in the region that ends the disproportionate impact of HIV and AIDS in our communities. And so far, we have been in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Baton Rouge. We were just there last week. We've been in Montgomery and Selma, Alabama. We've been to Jackson and Greenville, Mississippi. And our next stop will be Memphis, Tennessee, and surrounding areas, and then on to Houston and even beyond, because we we really feel like when you come into our communities, when you get people sitting around that table working on a quilt panel, and they have these conversations, and you humanize the stories, you humanize these experiences. I believe that's how we're truly going to make a difference when it comes to how we address HIV in this region, particularly because we don't end HIV in the United States if we don't end HIV in the South, period. And that's why changing the pattern is important.
Well, I want to thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. Please keep us updated on what can be done and how the community can become involved. And as you said, ending that stigma is the most important part of ending this epidemic. Thank you for all the work you're doing, Ms. Ward, and we look forward to supporting you going forward. We're going to keep this conversation going. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. We'll be back after the break.
Next on Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach. Listen to this. Women of color are starting 90% of the businesses in this country. That's the good news. The bad news, as a rule, we're not making nearly as much as everyone else. But joining us on the next Get Wealthy episode is Betty Hines. She's a business strategist, and she's showing women how to elevate other women.
I don't like to say this openly, but we're getting better at it. Women struggle with collaborating with each other. And for that reason, one of the things that I demonstrate in the sessions that I have is that you can go further together if you collaborate.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hey, I'm Antonique Smith.
What up, Lana Well, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
In today's Black and Missing, we talk about the story of Daniel D'Souza Beckham, who has been missing since New Year's Eve. The 10-year-old was last seen in Los Angeles and may require medical attention. He is 5'2" tall, weighs 150 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Daniel D'Souza Beckham should call the Los Angeles County Police Department at 213-972-7813. Again, that's 213-972-7813. We're going to turn to some headlines now. Today, a Georgia grand jury was ordered to release a portion of the 2020 election probe by a Fulton County judge. In a court order released today, sections of the report issued by Georgia's special grand jury investigating whether President Trump and his allies violated the law is set to be made public this week. Fulton County Superior Court Judge McBurney said the introduction, conclusion, and a section of unnamed witnesses who may have lied under oath would be made public Thursday. Additionally, Georgia launched an investigation in 2021 when audio surfaced of President Trump attempting to overturn the Georgia election results between the then president and Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. Trump has denied any wrongdoing, describing the call as a perfect call. We will see what these portions of the grand jury report let us know. And of course, we will cover this when those portions are made public. Additionally, following up on another story in Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi has appointed a public works director in the wake of the longing public crisis. Jackson, the most populous city in Mississippi, has appointed Robert Lee, who serves as the city's engineer and was named interim director of the Jackson Public Works Department on Friday. The city has struggled with its water system, and it has been denied financial aid to update the infrastructure. Jackson begins a nationwide search for a permanent candidate to fill the public works director role. Additionally, today in headlines, a sad headline: David Trugoy the Dove, one-third of the iconic rap triumvirate De La Soul, has died. Considered one of the most innovative acts in hip-hop history, De La Soul made their mark particularly in the early 90s when they represented a fun balance to the then burgeoning gangster rap scene. And De La Soul's 2017 Royalty Cakes video, they candidly spoke about how his ailing health kept him from performing, but they kept pushing through it all. I remember when we watched the Grammys, me and my wife said, well, why isn't all the De La Soul there? Well, now we know. The early work of De La Soul is characterized by layering disparate samples, melding together jazz along an energetic canvas, and unleashing this quirky rhyme canonically songs from Breakdown, Me, Myself, and I. Of course, David was 54 years old, and he will, of course, be missed by all who are fans of their music. Also, we have to go to one of my favorite stories of the day, which is the conservative meltdown over the Super Bowl. As many of you who have followed social media know, even if you didn't watch the Super Bowl, you will know that Rihanna performed the halftime show and Cheryl Lee Ralph performed the Black National Anthem before the Super Bowl. This sent conservatives into a tizzy. Prior to the Super Bowl, Donald Trump sent out a series of truths on Truth Social, criticizing Rihanna for not having any quote-unquote talent, and said that she depends completely on her stylist. That's the only reason she has a career. And this was a retweeted by Congressman Ronnie Jackson and many others in the MAGA movement. Donald Trump is mad because back in 2016, Rihanna's people filed court documents demanding that President Trump stop using her music at his rallies. And because of this, Donald Trump, being the petty god himself, has held a grudge against Rihanna ever since. And the same conservatives who have been complaining about raunchy and over-the-top halftime performances going back to Janet Jackson, Rihanna does a family-friendly and very tame and middle-of-the-road concert, and they're still mad about that. And then even before they got to the halftime show, they were mad about Cheryl Lee Ralph performing the Black National Anthem. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert tweeted out there should be only one national anthem being performed, and that should be the American national anthem. Why are we trying to divide America? I want to bring the panel back in. State Representative Shannon, why do you think these people are so mad about the Black national anthem being performed and about the kind of magical nature and majesty of Rihanna's show, debuting her pregnancy, family-friendly show? They still mad about that?
Well, the thing is that I don't care what Donald Trump thinks, and I doubt that there are many people who do care what he thinks. He is a Cheeto doppelganger, and I think what he's really upset about is that there were not roles for Cheeto doppelgangers in the Super Bowl. So why are we even talking about Donald Trump? He has nothing of importance to say. Cheryl Lee Ralph did a great job in her performance. The only thing that I just kind of question about having our national anthem sung, the Black national anthem sung at the Super Bowl, is that I hope that this is not an attempt to just do window dressing by the NFL. We all know that they need to make serious equity reforms in the way that they compensate players who are largely Black and who are really taking a beating to their bodies, and a lot of times at the end of their career dealing with serious health issues that they are not fairly compensated for, sometimes having those issues that can be career ending fairly early. So I hope that that is not just a sort of token to show support to our community rather than putting in true equity for these players.
That is exactly what it is. It's exactly a token for them. They've been doing it since the George Floyd protest. If you remember, that was the same time they started putting "End Racism" in the back of the end zone and on the back of their helmets. Even with the "End Racism" on the helmets, they were still racist towards Brian Flores, racist towards Steve Wilkes, racist towards all these other black coaches. But they're happy to have you sing the national anthem, as long as that doesn't cost them millions of dollars. Dr. Malveaux, why do you think conservatives have a particular hatred for black women, and particularly excellent black women? We saw Marjorie Taylor Greene tweet out, Chris Stapleton's national anthem was great as opposed to all the other wokeness that happened. Why do conservatives have such a problem with black women being exalted and being excellent on a national stage?
Well, you know why, Robert. You know, the anti-blackness visits black women even more acutely. I call it the misogynoir, where basically it's a misogyny that is amplified by our blackness. I don't know what it is that makes white people so hateful, Marjorie Greene so stupid, but what I know is that Rihanna did a great job, Shirley Ralph did a great job, black women excel, and we have seen that. We've seen it. You're down there in Atlanta where you saw Latasha and Melanie Campbell and the others. Sisters have been bringing it. And because we've been bringing it, there are those who just wish we would go away, but we're not going to go away. Again, you know, Black resistance is the theme for Black History Month, and many sisters are resisting in terms of everything they do. But I was just repulsed by what does that man, the orange orangutan, have to do with the Super Bowl? Why does he have anything to say? Marjorie Taylor Greene, same thing. You know, I mean, I saw her at the State of the Union with that white fur and that white dress on. I said, all you need is a hood on your head, honey, so that you don't have to masquerade yourself. But, you know, we've seen this historically as we make gains, not only as Black women, but as Black people. When we make gains, then to Roland, white rage comes and tries to snatch them back. What I liked about the Super Bowl, frankly, was that there were 2 Black quarterbacks. I'm not a football fan, but that is Black history. 2 Black quarterbacks when 20 years ago, they acted as if Black people didn't have enough sense to be a quarterback. So it was a historic Super Bowl, and the singing of the anthem certainly is no more than window dressing, but I still like to hear it sung.
You know, it's interesting to me on the point about the 2 Black quarterbacks. Normally for Super Bowls, I've been watching Super Bowls since I was born. The concentration is on the 2 quarterbacks, back and forth, their rivalry, their life stories, etc. You didn't see that this year. The story was about the Kelce brothers, Travis Kelce for Kansas City and Jason Kelce for Philadelphia, their family dynamics. And they had Mama Kelce at the game and Daddy Kelce, and they talked about them in college and all these other things. Because when it's 2 brothers as quarterbacks, that's also not a story, so they have to find something else that's interesting to the mass of the population. Dr. DeBang, I wanted to get your take on this. What has to happen for it to no longer be controversial for Black folks to speak on their own behalf in their own spaces? Because if it's just us making the money, that's fine. But at lower levels, if we try to sing our national anthem, then all of a sudden there's too much wokeness overrunning the country.
We have to keep doing exactly what we're doing. In my work as a practitioner and trainer in diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, I'm always talking to organizations about what are you doing to make sure that everybody feels seen and that everybody feels heard and everybody feels like they're being celebrated and not tolerated. You have an organization in the NFL that has almost 60% Black players and 0% Black ownership. And so the Black players have run the league. And as Dr. Malveaux was saying, the quarterbacks was something that, you know, we had Doug Williams and others throughout history, but not enough, because the quarterbacks was never something that was really optional for Black football players until recent history. And so we have to be mindful of that. And so what we have to keep doing is we have to keep speaking out. You know, Jay-Z has been involved with the NFL for a while, and he gets a lot of criticism for some of his moves. But one of the things that he's been doing is in these entertainment spaces, he's been part of the group that's making sure that these Black voices are heard. We had Shirley Lee Ralph perform this, our anthem, the Black national anthem, 123 years from the day that it was first performed in 1900. That's history there. When you see what Rihanna's doing, this is the sister who sold clothes or shoes on the streets with her dad in Barbados, and people want to, and look at what she's doing now, and pregnant on top of that. She represents the American dream in every way, shape, or form. These conservatives want to talk about pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. Well, what about the black people who didn't even have boots or managed to get a hold of some and pull their boots up to those higher heights that you see Rihanna singing from right now? So what we have to keep doing is, while they keep complaining, we have to keep pushing the envelope. We have to keep jumping in their faces with it in terms of our celebration, not belligerence, but just celebrating who we are. And of course, we need networks like the Black Star Networks to make sure that the stories of Hurts and Mahomes are going to be talked about, like you're doing right now, when these other news networks and sports networks are going to make those two brothers the priority. So we got to keep speaking up. We got to keep being inclusive, and we keep, if we're going to, if we're not going to see Kaepernick ever play again, we have to bring the spirit of what Kaepernick was fighting for to the NFL to make sure that they are continuing to go on a process of making sure that black inclusion is not just performative, but also leads towards ownership and, of course, more black quarterbacks in the league.
All right. Well, I think it's important that we highlight our own stories, and that's why you have something like the Black Star Network. We're going to keep this conversation going. We'll be back after the break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
It's Kim Whitley.
Yo, what's up? This your boy Ice Cube.
Hey, yo, Peace World. What's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
It is American Heart Month. As many of you know, over 805,000 Americans have heart attacks every year. The leading cause of death, heart disease kills over 700,000 people each year. Now, one of the leading causes of heart issues is stress. Here to talk a little bit about stress and what can be done to increase your heart health is cardiologist Dr. Rachel M. Bond. Dr. Bond, how are you doing this evening?
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I think this is a crucial issue. I've told people before, my father died from heart disease. It's something that's run prevalent in my family. My grandmother had 13 kids, 8 boys and 5 girls. All 8 of the boys died, most of them because of heart disease and heart-related issues. So it's something that hits very close to home for me. For people who have a history in their family of heart-related issues, what are some of the preventative steps they need to be taking to ensure that they do not kind of fall victim to their family legacy?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, it's actually knowing what your risk factors are. As you mentioned, genetics does play a major role, but it's not genetics that actually lead to 80% of heart disease being preventable. Knowing the other risk factors like your blood pressure, what your cholesterol is, if you have a history of diabetes or even borderline diabetes, if you're exercising and eating a healthy diet, all of those are things that actually allow heart disease 80% of the time to be preventable. The only way to do that is to go to the clinician and get your numbers checked, but most importantly, track those numbers and make sure that your blood pressure is at the target, your cholesterol is at the target, your blood sugar is at the target, as well as your weight is at the target based on the conversations you have amongst yourselves with your clinician.
And with that, we talk a lot about how to get your blood pressure under control, but I talk to a lot of black men in particular, and some of them are watching and they know that I've talked to them about this, about going to the doctor, and they all say to a man, well, I'm afraid they're going to put me on pills. Can you talk a little bit about how being on pills is a lot less bad than dying?
So that's a very profound statement. What I will say is that many a times, even before we get to the point of needing pills, we really do hone in and focus on lifestyle. Exercising 30 minutes a day of moderate cardio, which includes walking at a brisk pace, that can lower your blood pressure sometimes by 10 to 15 points. And then coupling that with a heart-healthy lifestyle where you're lowering the amount of sodium intake, that could further drop your blood pressure down. You are absolutely right to say that there are certain situations where lifestyle may not be enough, and that's where medications are absolutely necessary. And as you noted, if the medications are necessary, what they're doing is they're preventing a stroke, they're preventing a heart attack, and they're possibly saving your life.
And with that, on this conversation about lifestyle, we kind of have a zeitgeist, a social media push about body positivity, about feeling great about who you are, about being healthy at any weight, quote unquote. But at the same time, the numbers remain the numbers when it comes to heart disease, heart attacks, and the mortality rates for black men and black women in particular. How can you balance kind of this need for people to feel good about themselves, but also making it very clear and stark to them that you have to make these lifestyle changes in order to have the type of length of lifestyle of life that you may want?
Absolutely. And I do think that there is a stigma in our community in particular, and many communities of color, that if you are overweight or obese, sometimes people are going to look at you differently or treat you differently. But it's important that people acknowledge the fact that obesity is a chronic medical condition, just like having high blood pressure, just like having high cholesterol, and just like having diabetes. A lot of those chronic medical conditions can be managed with lifestyle, but sometimes we may need other interventions, including medications. And I think that for us as clinicians, we do have to become more comfortable having those conversations with our patients, because that could be a matter of having a stroke or having a heart attack or not. And I'm erring on the side of not, by knowing that not only what our risks are, but more importantly, doing everything we can to lower the likelihood of having those poor outcomes. So I do think that it's extremely important for us to think about our health individually and think about it more in the sense that if I know what my risks are now, and the earlier we know our risks, the better. Because the thing about heart disease, it's a chronic condition, but it's so largely preventable that if we know our risks immediately, and the younger the better, we could actually prevent these bad outcomes from happening.
Absolutely. I got one more question. I'm going to bring the panel in on this discussion because I'm sure they have very important insights. But when you talk about this need to change diets, that's where I found you have the highest amount of resistance. Folks saying, well, there ain't no seasoning on it, there ain't no flavor on it, this tastes like white people food, this tastes like hospital food, etc. What are the things that we need to do, particularly with our families and friends and loved ones, if not ourselves, to help them understand the needs to have a better and healthier diet, cut down on sodium, cut down on seasonings, while you can still have good food, flavorful food, but something that won't put you in the grave?
Absolutely. And you said it perfectly, that we want to think about this not necessarily as a diet, but more of a lifestyle change, and a lifestyle change not just for us, but our entire tribe, including our family, our friends, and our colleagues. And one way to do so is that we know when we have foods that are high in extra sodium, a lot of that are processed foods, foods that we unfortunately may not have an opportunity to cook, that can lower, if we remove those types of foods from our diet, that can lower the likelihood of having a lot of these chronic medical conditions. We know that even though some of the foods we think that are more bland tend to be, or the foods that are more bland tend to be more healthier, we can still have our flavors even without sodium, because spices, as an example, do not impact our blood pressure. They don't impact our blood sugar. So speaking with your healthcare professional about what diet works best for you, and even considering utilizing the care of a registered dietitian who may be able to perfect that diet to your particular culture, actually can go a long way. But in summary, the main things that we want to avoid are excessive amounts of sodium and excessive amounts of saturated fat, a lot of which comes from red meat and fried food, as well as processed foods.
Absolutely. Let's bring our panel in. Dr. Dominga, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you for all of the incredible work that you're doing, Dr. Bond, in this field. One of the questions that I have is, what are your thoughts as it relates to stress in our community as it relates to the incidents that we're seeing of police violence and Tyree Nichols and the like? You know, I've read stories about how seeing things like this can have an entire community impact as it relates to our levels of stress. What advice do you have for us as it relates to getting in touch with acknowledging that and managing that?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And I will say that psychosocial stress, what we as communities of color have to encounter absolutely impact our cardiovascular health. We actually know that data shows that people who have a large amount of stress, generalized anxiety, coming from the social aspects of discrimination, feeling as though they're necessarily being targeted because of who they are and what they look like, they actually have worse cardiovascular outcomes. As such, what we as cardiologists are trying to do is factor in those social aspects to the conversation when we're caring for our patients to see, beyond just not having the opportunity to eat healthy, what's the driver to that? What are the social drivers that are limiting the patient's ability to access healthy food? But most importantly, are there any stressors that could be causing an inflammatory response that's actually triggering prematurely them to have a lot of these underlying risk factors that lead to premature heart disease? So I think that stress is such an important thing that we as clinicians need to do a better job in screening for and feeling more comfortable having conversations with our patients regarding.
Absolutely. Dr. Malveaux?
First of all, sister, thank you for your work. I appreciate it. We appreciate the ways that we have to look at health and it doesn't hit us all equally. So what I'd like you to talk about a little bit is Black women and heart disease. I know that we are as likely to die from heart disease, I believe, as men are, but correct me if I'm wrong. But while we talk a lot about breast cancer, which we must, I don't think we talk enough about heart disease.
We do not. And just to put it into perspective, 1 in 30 women will die from breast cancer, whereas 1 in 3 will die from heart disease. And when you actually think about it as Black women, greater than 1 in 2 will die from heart disease. It is, when we think about it in the greater scheme of things, Black women are probably the highest risk population. And a lot of it does fall into the predisposition to many of those risk factors I mentioned, the high blood pressure, the high cholesterol, and the diabetes. But all of those are driven similarly by those psychosocial stressors. I mean, stress factors in the discrimination, the sexism that many of us encounter as women as well. All of that trickles into why there is a predisposition for some of us, particularly Black women, to have these chronic medical conditions. And the good news is that, as I said, heart disease is preventable 80% of the time. So making sure you're going every year for your well woman checkup, getting your cholesterol checked, your blood pressure checked, your blood sugar checked, someone's talking to you about your weight, talking to you about what is a heart healthy diet and what exercise you should be doing, all of that can actually lower the likelihood of having a bad outcome, such as a heart attack.
And State Representative Shannon, real quick, I have about a minute left.
Thank you for all the great information you've given us. Just real quick, some people say that walking is the gold standard for reducing blood pressure, as you mentioned before. But is it really specifically about the brisk walking, or is it really just 30 minutes of any cardio exercise is going to get your heart pumping? So a stationary bike, Zumba, does it have to be walking?
No, that's a great question. It doesn't have to be walking. I like to say it can be something as simple as walking, because many people may not have the time to get to the gym. They may not have the means to get to the gym. So that's why walking is probably just as good as doing Zumba, just as good as getting on that stationary bike, just as good as getting on that treadmill. It's what we classify as moderate cardio. And any type of cardio that's going to get your heart rate up, get you to break out into a sweat, is going to lower the likelihood of having a stroke and a heart attack, something we call cardiovascular disease.
Well, we thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Can you talk a little bit about resources for people where they can go that will tell them what you need to be eating, what you need to be doing, and kind of best practices to start the preventative measures now and not wait till it becomes an emergency?
Absolutely. So I am honored to volunteer with the Association of Black Cardiologists, which is a non-for-profit organization that really has focused in on lowering the chances of having heart disease and stroke in the Black community. We have a series of resources on the website, which is abcardio.org. On that website, you'll have 7 simple steps to how to maintain a heart-healthy lifestyle, a lot of which I talked about today. But also there is access to a cookbook that gives you the opportunity to understand what actually would be a heart-healthy meal to make for you and your family. And I emphasize family because I do think it's important that we talk about the generational health, how what we do will impact our children and our loved ones, including our friends and our colleagues.
We thank you so much for all that you're doing. Thank you for keeping us updated. And it's very important that everybody follows this information from your doctor. No, it will not make your food bland. It'll just make you live a little bit longer so you can eat more of it. Thank you so much, Dr. Bond, for everything you're doing. We're going to continue this conversation on the other side of the break, talking about pediatric heart issues. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, a relationship that we have to have. We're often afraid of it and don't like to talk about it. That's right, we're talking about our relationship with money. And here's the thing, our relationship with money oftentimes determines whether we have it or not.
The truth is you cannot change what you will not acknowledge.
Balancing your relationship with your pocketbook. That's next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. An hour of living history with Dr. Richard Mariba Kelsey, thinker, builder, author, and one of the most important and impactful elders in the African American community. He reflects on his full and rich life and shares his incomparable wisdom about our past, present, and future.
African genius is saying that my uncle was a genius, my brother was a genius, my neighbor was a genius. I think we ought to drill that in ourselves and move ahead rather than believing that I got it.
That's next on the Black Table, here on the Black Star Network.
This is Judge Mathis.
Hi, I'm Teresa Griffin.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
before the break, we had a conversation with Dr. Bond about the need for cardiovascular health for the African American community. But what many people do not think about is the fact that many of these habits are formed in childhood, and that we have a growing number of Black children who are affected by heart disease. Joining us now to discuss how heart disease is affecting kids is Dr. Annette Ansong. Dr. Ansong, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Mr. Patillo?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you so much for all that you do in the community. Most people don't think about pediatric heart disease, but can you talk a little bit about how it's affecting our communities and what can be done to help ameliorate it?
Absolutely. So I think it's important to distinguish the types of heart disease in children. There's congenital, and those are those heart defects that babies are born with. In fact, congenital heart disease is the most common congenital defect amongst those that are around. One out of 100 children are affected every year, so about 40,000 babies. And congenital heart disease is a spectrum. It can be anything as simple as a small hole in the heart that requires no intervention, to more complex heart disease that may require interventions and/or surgery. So that's congenital. Then there's also acquired heart disease, and that's heart disease that can be from lifestyle, what we eat, our genetics, that can affect us later on in life as adults. And there are risk factors for heart disease, such as obesity, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And these risk factors are modifiable, meaning they're habits or things that we can change that lowers our risk of getting heart disease.
And with that, when it comes to children and the kind of environmental aspects of heart disease, what are the changes that have to be made? Because we're seeing obesity rates among children being higher than ever. PE and outdoor time is being taken out of schools. A lot of communities, it's harder to have playing fields, etc. What are some of the things that can be done by parents to help their children who may be suffering from obesity and high blood pressure?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Obesity is an epidemic in children. It's a big one. In fact, it affects our community, our Black and brown children, the most. And in regards to what we can do to lessen that, to fix that, would be, one, we need to prioritize our health. Because if we're not thinking about it, it's not going to happen. And it starts with the parents. If the children see their parents taking their heart health seriously, their health and wellness seriously, then they too know that this is something important. And I like to employ something that I call the DEW method, DEW, diet, exercise, and water. And part of that, with our diet, we have to eat foods that are high in fiber, less in sugar, fat, and salt. So a lot of this comes from the fruits and vegetables that we eat or can eat on a daily basis, at least 4 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. And then also exercise. Children between 2 and 19 years of age should be getting at least 1 hour of moderate to vigorous activity every day. And then in regards to water, kids should be drinking at least 8 cups of water a day. But the biggest thing, I think the biggest factor with all of this, that the parents have to be the influencers, if I may use the term, because, like I said, they're the role models for their children. If they take it seriously, their children will take it seriously. You can even make it a family affair. I think it makes it more engaging for the children, along with the family members too, as well.
Well, you talked a little bit about influencers, and it made me think a couple weeks ago when the Waffle House sandwich went crazy. You buy 2 waffles, you fill it with like a Philly cheesesteak and bacon and all this other stuff, and people just went wild around the country, going to pay $30-something for a Waffle House sandwich. I think about the pink sauce that was viral last year. Now you can buy that in Walmart, etc. So the reason I say the social media has such a strong pull, particularly on young people. Yeah. How can we use social media to help promote a healthy lifestyle and heart health?
I mean, we have to advocate, do what you're doing here, talking about it, speaking about it, showing folks the numbers that if we don't make changes in their risk factors, that they are prone to heart disease. So we need more, physicians, non-physicians out in the community, just preaching about the goodness of heart health and that we want folks to live a long life. And these are the measures that they have to take in order to achieve that. I'm part of the Association of Black cardiologists incorporated, and we have a book, 7 Steps to a Healthy Heart. So information such as that, promoting that type of work, those type of cookbooks that help promote heart health.
All right, we're going to bring the panel in. Dr. Malveaux, do you have a question for Dr. Ansong?
I sure do. Thank you, doctor, for the information, especially around the children. And I'm very concerned after COVID. I mean, kids don't go out to play so much anymore. And so many of our young people are addicted to the screen. You talked about an hour a day of exercise for young people, but especially with working moms who may not be home during the day after kids get out from school, what can we do to incent young people to actually exercise? How can we make it fun for them and not a chore?
Yeah, I'm guilty as charged. I have a 10-year-old son, and he's on his screen from time to time. It's hard. It's very difficult. But like I said, you have to make it a priority, because if you're not thinking about it, it's not going to happen. And I said an hour every day, but I mean, give me 15 minutes. Or you can break up the hour into 15-minute chunks. Or if you can't do the hour, 10, 15 minutes a day, do something and be consistent about it.
Dr. Davinga?
Well, one of the questions that I have is issue of access to healthy foods. I just recently moved to Maryland from Anacostia, which is Ward 8 in Southeast, which is one of the most underserved areas of Washington, D.C. And one of the challenges that we have in many of our communities is access to the healthier foods. And even in some of these school areas where we see like more organic sections and like the Safeway and stuff, they tend to cost a lot more. What are some of your thoughts as it relates to the issues of access to healthier foods in our community in 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, it's hard, especially in our community. And it goes back, I think, to those social determinants of health. And for that, I think that's where we really, again, have to advocate. We have to go to our policymakers and demand that we have access to these healthier foods like they are in other communities, and show folks the numbers and the statistics at how not having healthy foods is, literally killing us. So I think just starting there, starting with our local policymakers, and then, taking it to a bigger scale in regards to state, federal level, on how it's important and needed that we have better foods in our communities.
Representative Shannon?
Thanks, Dr. Ansong, for all the information you've given us. Just one quick question. I don't have any children, but obviously I do have little ones in my family. What are some ways that we can get kids to eat, the vegetables that they should be eating, particularly the greens, not in a processed form? Because adults will eat collard greens, Brussels sprouts, kale. We'll eat the stuff that we know we need to, but for kids, it can be very challenging.
Yeah, you have to be creative, make it fun, because kids like fun. I know sometimes with some of the fruits, you can perhaps make them a frozen treat that they might enjoy. It's not easy, but we just have to be a little bit more creative in how we present food to the kids, so it is more appealing and appetizing to them, and also stressing the importance of why you're doing it, why we're giving them the vegetables, because we want them to have good cholesterol. We want them to be heart healthy with good cholesterol and good blood pressures as well. So they have to know the intention of why you're doing what you're doing, and perhaps they'll be more amenable to eating those types of foods.
And Dr. I'm not going to call what relative it is out on this, but we live in a generation where many young people, particularly middle school and high school kids, have access to an Uber Eats account. And so when they get home from school, if there's not food cooked, they are very used to just hitting a button and having whatever their heart desires delivered to their house. Again, I am not naming the relative who this is directed at. What do we do to help kids develop those type of healthy eating habits earlier, particularly given the current environment where you can hit a button and have a bucket of fried chicken at your house in 35, 40 minutes?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of competition out there, but I think our mindset has to be that we want to create that generational health, and that it starts young. And a lot of times it starts with us as the parents. And as busy as our lives is, we have to make health and wellness a priority, not only for ourselves, but for our children. and just emphasize the importance of living a good, heart-healthy lifestyle. And good things don't always come easy. Sometimes you have to work for it. So instilling those values and virtues in our children, and hopefully ultimately when they become older adults, they'll make wise, heart-healthy decisions for themselves.
All right, and before we leave, what are some resources that people can turn to if they want more information on how to help their children start out with a more heart-healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I'm part of the Association of Black Cardiologists, and we have a book, 7 Steps of Heart Health. There's also the American Academy of Pediatrics as well that has information on heart health. So those are 2 good resources to start from.
All right, well, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing and all these resources that are available. So parents, make sure you reach out. You are not the only one fighting this. You're not the only people fighting this battle. You're not the only people going through this. And there are doctors such as Dr. Song and Dr. Bond who are able to help you. I want to thank our panel so much. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Song, for joining us. I want to thank our panel, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, Dr. Omakong Dabinga, and State Representative Renita Shannon. I want to thank all of our guests today. I want to thank everyone in the control room who are in my ear making all of this possible, making this look smooth for everybody. I gotta thank Roland for giving me the opportunity to keep his chair warm while he is out. He will be back soon to join on you. I'm sure he will have a great recap of everything he's been doing recently. Follow me on all social media at Robert Patillo. And as I said at the end of every show, in the words of Gil Scott-Heron, no matter the consequences or the fears that grip your senses, you gotta hold on to your dreams. Hold on to your dreams, America. Holla!
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair, take your seat at the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.